proceed, let the embers glow. Just the facts, balls and strikes, here we go. Spin walks out, let the real talk flow. Fireside Chats with Bederow.
Hello and welcome to Defense Diaries. I'm your host, Bob Motta, and as always, I'm joined by my beautiful and brilliant co-host, Ali. What's up, girl?
Hey, babe. Hey, Mark.
And our wonderful guest, Mark Bederow. So what did you think of the Open, man?
I was expecting some kind of bluesy thing, and you went and smoothed it out. Wow.
Boom. Nailed it. Nailed it. It's a real earworm. I was singing it in the shower. It was great. Thanks for joining us, man. I know it's still a bit of a work day for you on this fine Friday, but we're leading into the weekend, so I can't think of a better way to kick the weekend off with hanging with you. I got a lot of softball. The softball just never seems to end. My daughter's season but I love it. It's a blast. Yeah. So what are you up to? You busy?
Always busy. Also, the house is a little empty. Daughter went off to camp, so it's she's not all bad, really. It's
is that like in the Catskills kind of thing, or Poconos?
It's one of these towns in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, where everyone from New York, New Jersey seems to go to camp. Yeah,
we did Golden Slipper because my dad was on the members out there, even though it's so we did it for father-child weekend, even though it's for like whatever, but so I know the area.
Yeah, it's like nothing but camps and hillbillies out where they are.
Yeah, Ali's sister and brother-in-law, they send their kids away for 2 months for camp, like the whole summer.
Yeah. Pine, all 3 of them. Probably out that same area, Pine, whatever.
Yeah. It's I'm like, wow, you have every summer to yourself. That's pretty amazing.
I wish. Not exactly, but close enough.
Yeah, it's
she loves camp. So
there's nothing in Illinois. There's like not a camp worth of shit around here because it's all flat, so you don't have like the mountains and the
outdoor lakes and hills, and they do
all the stuff, canoeing and zip lining,
and tubing and water skiing and tennis and dance and blah blah blah.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, you just have to take out, like a second mortgage.
Yeah, exactly. It ain't cheap. It ain't cheap.
No, it's insane.
All right. Listen, Mark, I've had you on the show multiple times. I've probably asked you this shit, but I kind of want to like dig into what makes Mark Bederow tick a little bit, and did you start off as a prosecutor originally coming out of law school?
I did. I applied. You may find this interesting. So I definitely wanted to be a prosecutor to start, for sure. And, I went to Syracuse, so obviously in the Northeast area. And so understandably, Manhattan was first choice because it was best office in the country.
Yep.
Even though if you had told me 3 years prior, can you ever see yourself living and working in New York City? I would have told you I'd rather be dead. So interestingly enough, the only other office I applied to in New York, because I had no interest in going to New York, but I let my parents convince me, just apply to another one. You never know.
Yeah.
And they said, why don't you apply to, Brooklyn or something? I don't want to live or work in Brooklyn. So I just kind of eeny, meeny, miny mode Queens. Don't ask me why. And the other place where I actually interviewed and went all the way to the end and had to withdraw because I took a job in Manhattan was the Cook County State Attorney's Office.
Wow.
Nice. We could have used a good man in there, Mark. It's been a shit show.
I remember, so when I went to Chicago, it was the first time I'd actually been to Chicago when I went out there to interview. And it was in the winter, it was freezing cold. And it was actually the day that Chris Farley died in the Hancock building. It was
man. Yeah.
This must have been, I think, 1997 or whatnot. And I'd been there earlier that day. And it was a great interview. I loved the place. It was interesting. I don't know if this is still the case. It was the only prosecutor's office I'd ever seen where they were actually in a high rise. Like the prosecutor was in like a real office building instead of a dumpy kind of 6-story whatever.
Yep.
And I enjoyed it, although their interviewing process was a little bizarre. One of the things they were big on was, Illinois at the time, they were a death penalty state. I know that changed because of the governor and all that stuff.
Yep.
But and they asked during their interview, you're interviewing in New York, which is not that kind of place. We are here, and how do you feel about that? And I'm 20 something years old. I'm like, I'm going to be prosecuting jaywalkers. What do you want from me about life and death? But I liked it. And to tell you the truth, I would have gone and moved to Chicago and worked there if I didn't take a job in Manhattan.
Oh, man.
The whole life trajectory change.
We'd be coming around, hanging out.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Damn.
Might even have bears. I mean, who knows? You never know.
You never know. So I have a very quick Chris Farley story. I always tell this story. So I think I can't remember what it was. It had to have been early 90s. I think I wasn't in law school yet. At any rate, I went to Second City. It's a feeder for SNL. And I remember after going to it, walking out, and I'm like, I don't know if anybody on this particular cast is going to make it to SNL. And the next season on SNL, Chris Farley and Tim Meadows both made it. And it was funny, but it was, and Chris was doing his, physical comedy stuff, but I just didn't. And so we recently went when Runkle came into town, we went out there and Runkle and Kurt from Uncivil Law were both miserable and disappointed with the show because Kurt was like, we're definitely going to Second City. And I had the same vibe though last time. You just never know. You never know. And then Chris came out and turned out to be amazing, hilarious, man.
I could watch Tommy Boy on
his stuff was, because the thing that I loved about him is he just was all in, he wasn't afraid to go all in on it. Kind of some people hate Will Ferrell. I like Will Ferrell because he goes all the way in on a roll. He holds nothing back. He doesn't matter if he looks like a total jackass. And I love that, an actor is willing to go that far and it's kind of put themselves out there. And that was how Farley always was too,
Yeah, I mean, it probably killed him, being
yeah. Well, that and the coke, I think.
Yeah, that personality just so.
Yeah, it was Belushi-esque,
Yeah,
so
but no, I do know that the people, they're enamored with your legal prowess. They want to know more about you. So, since you came up on the other side of the aisle before becoming a defense attorney, I don't know, what was was there a moment, a case, a verdict, a realization that made you cross over? Or did you always plan to kind of do both jobs? Or did you ever see the job differently? And do you ever see the job differently because of where you started?
Yeah, I mean, I never planned to be a career prosecutor, even though I loved it. Look, when you're in your early to mid 20s, young lawyer, living in Manhattan, whatever, there's no better job than being surrounded by those kind of like-minded, brilliant people, hardworking, party hard at the same time, so much to do. So, it's still the best job I ever had. I loved it. But no, for me, it was always going to be that 5 to 7 year kind of sweet spot, get experience, go.
Yeah.
I don't know what they do in Chicago, but in Manhattan, they had a 3-year gentleman's agreement you committed to before anyone would leave. Most people kept that, other than, perhaps Andrew Cuomo and a few others, Elliot Spitzer and a few others who worked there who might not have. I think Kennedy Jr. did, but who knows? But no, I was never going to be a lifer. So it was, I didn't know when that time would be. And actually, the time that I left was I had a pretty fascinating case with a pretty well-known, prominent lawyer who I won't name on this. And I, at the time, he was This was a few years prior. He was a pain in the ass. He was a dick, but he was brilliant, and he was an incredible advocate. And a few years later, you know, their firm was looking for people, and he called, and we met, and it was the right kind of thing, right time to leave. You know, quadrupling your salary overnight didn't hurt.
That helps.
Obviously, and all that goes with that. But I mean, as far as, there was no one case or anything like that. I mean, I rather enjoyed getting the bad guys. But having said that, having been on the other side, as important as it is to have dedicated prosecutors to make sure that the bad guys get caught, nothing is as satisfying. And I know you've definitely done the same thing, where every now and then you get a factually, actually, unquestionably innocent person who is getting absolutely screwed by the system and is looking at you as, you know, the firewall, the last chance, the last hope. It's probably too much responsibility that you want, a lot of pressure. You know, an innocent client, as you know, is a blessing and a curse for the obvious reasons. But when it works out, that as a lawyer, I think is much more satisfying than anything being a prosecutor ever could be. And again, I love being a prosecutor and have, you know, a lot of friends from those days, a lot who still work there. Some are lifers. But, you know, great respect for the profession. But no, I was happy to leave.
Yeah.
Now too.
I always wondered, you know, because we never practiced on that side of the aisle, and I thought to myself that it was always a pretty significant advantage having done that, you know, because it's like you really don't know unless you've been on that side of the aisle, like how the sausage is made in terms of kind of like the inner workings of the office. You know what I mean? Like when we would go in on like low felony cases and you know, we're trying to work out a plea because they got the goods on our guy, you know, and you're doing that part of the job where you're trying to say, all right, let's make sure that the, you know, the punishment fits the crime here. And, you know, it's like not having had that experience in that office, it's hard to know how to kind of maneuver, because you get a lot of young prosecutors, especially, you know, like you said, when you're coming in, they're putting you in traffic, you know, and all the misdemeanor shit. And then eventually you start moving up the chain, but you're still young, you know, and it was always a frustrating thing for me because I was a little older when I went to law school. And, you know, when you're trying to have these conversations where you're trying to humanize your client for a prosecutor that, you know, has a shit ton of files, they're basically just looking at people as names and pieces of paper. So you're trying to flesh it out for them. And, you know, when you have these kids that are just kind of fresh out of law school or a couple of years out and really don't have the life experience to kind of understand how the world really works, it's frustrating, man.
It is. And in Manhattan particularly, it can be a disaster because they're, you know, one of the few DA's offices who recruits nationally. I mean, I was not unique in the sense of I'm not from New York. I've been in New York City a number of times, so I never really was from there, lived there, or knew the area. And, you know, that kind of office, you're getting people from California, New York, Texas, Massachusetts, whatever, and they don't know anything about the nuances of areas in New York, the culture, all of that. And of course, they're showing up at the time, you know, Law and Order was all the rage. I mean, they're filming it. I mean, you could see them when you were a rookie DA. Yep. I mean, I remember getting starstruck by like, my God, that's Angie Harmon being filmed like down. Like, it was awesome. So you get these young kids who are going to solve, they know better than anyone. They're going to solve the world's problems. They're smarter than you. We know more than you. They're more arrogant than everyone else. And it's a concern, but I don't know if they still do this, but I hate sounding like an old man, but you know, in my day, when we got trained as little young rookie do-gooders and know-it-alls, one of the first things they did was put you on a bus and take you to Rikers Island as literally a 23, 24-year-old DA, green, no experience in law school 3 months ago, and say, take a look around, you know, the various jails at Rikers Island. And when you casually recommend that somebody do a year in jail, 60 days, whatever. Here's where they go. Factor that in. And that was very telling. And then on the other side of the coin, they took us on a field trip up to a place. If you're from New York, it's called Robin's Neck, where they do NYPD training, where they have like the war games and the simulated whatever. And they let you play that about, responding to something. Does somebody have a gun, or is it a wallet, and you're shooting them or not shooting them? And then, of course, you're either getting, killed by getting shot because you didn't react, or you're shooting a civilian because they're taking out their wallet.
Yep.
And they're giving you perspective to say, when you sit in your ivory tower judging the cops, keep this in perspective as well. And it actually, we got really good training on both sides as well as you could.
That's actually pretty interesting. I like that. So Aliko wants to know, did you work with JFK Jr.?
No, he was gone. I think he left shortly before I got there. And actually, I was a rookie DA when, that Martha's Vineyard plane crash happened. That was, which I think was in 1999, if I recall. I think it was late in my first year there when that happened. But he was gone. But the people that came out of there at the time, like I said, some of them are not as glorious as JFK Jr. Andrew Cuomo, Elliot Spitzer, Sotomayor. I guess that counts. Supreme Court. That's
pretty
good.
sweet. It's a pretty good one.
Pretty good
one.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other ones, but no, I never got the chance to see JFK Jr. actually, on scene.
Yeah, and the thing that I think a lot of young attorneys, if you don't know and if you want to litigate, and people have a misconception about litigating attorneys, there's not many of us. We are not the norm. Like in terms of the actual percentage of attorneys that come out and litigate and are trial lawyers, it's very, very, very small. It's like last time I looked at it, it was under 10%. So that means like 90% are doing other stuff, and then there's trial lawyers were a different breed. There's no question about it. Ali and I knew from the get, as I'm assuming you did as well, we wanted to be in that courtroom arguing for a living. And when you switched over to, I call it the good side, to the defense side, did you have, what's that case for you, if you've had one that like made you lose sleep like after the fact? Have you had that case?
I have. I've had a lot of interesting cases and stories that I could go on for hours, but in terms of losing sleep, and it wasn't the biggest case in the world either. It wasn't the least serious. But it was a guy, and there's been news articles about it when the case got tried, but an all around just wholesome, good guy from Florida who was salt of the earth, very religious guy, good citizen, good everything. And in Florida, as you know, everyone has a gun. It's not a big deal. And the laws down there permit it. And, you throw it in the glove box and it's just there. And this is a guy whose idea of a trip to the big city would be, leaving Lake City, Florida to go to Ocala. He's that just wholesome. And he, his girlfriend at the time did an internship on the David Letterman show. So she was up in New York for the summer or whatever. And this guy, the chivalrous gentleman, said, I will come up, drive up, pick you up and bring you home. And so he drove up to, New York, and his GPS was all kinds of messed up. And, he's supposed to take a various trip to pick her up in Queens. Okay. Mm-hmm. He ends up in Manhattan. Don't ask me how or why. And in Manhattan, there are no right turns on red lights anywhere. It's just a city thing. Right. And he doesn't know that. He's driving a pickup truck from Florida.
Right.
And he makes a right turn on red, not thinking, gets pulled over. doesn't even register in his head, oh my God, I have a loaded, Glock in the box. They ask him, the typical license, registration. He's not even thinking, hey guys, there's a gun in the glove box, because it doesn't even, and he opens it up, and of course they see the gun, and it turns into a whole to-do, and he gets arrested and whatnot, and doesn't pick up his girlfriend. And 3 or 4 months later, his case is pending. I don't know him from a hole in the wall. And I'm sitting in a courtroom waiting for another case to get called. And he's just sitting there next to me, or in the hallway, maybe. It must have been the hallway, because they're not allowed to sit where we sit in the courtroom. But in any event, and he was just fretting and stressing. And he just starts up a conversation, nice guy. And he says, the typical, you're a lawyer, right? And he's like, and he was represented by legal aid at the time. And he said, can I just tell you, a story? And he told me this story, and I was horrified, right? I mean, in New York, it's 3.5 years in prison. And at the time, the lowest offer they can even make you is 2 years if you're indicted. Wow. And he was indicted. So he was in a bad spot.
Yeah.
And I'm telling him that's terrible, whatever. And then he starts, complaining about his lawyer, and I'm just kind of like, all right,
He's fishing. He's fishing for a lawyer.
A little bit. He's like, well, can I talk to you about representation? And this is a different time too. This is like 2011 or 12. Yep. And I said, yeah, here's my card. Call me. We'll meet in the office. I'm not going to sit here and talk to you in the courthouse hallway and pitch on whatever. And he did, and he came in and he hired and got the case and tried to convince the DA, what are you doing here? He clearly didn't know that the gun was there. I mean, it's right. He didn't. If you had said, do you have a gun? I have a gun. Sure. Right. But the gun is there as much as, the tire iron is there. You don't consciously think about it. And they wanted nothing to do with it. And we tried going up the chain to the DA, up the chain of the Manhattan DA's office. And we got up to the number 2 person in the office who, ironically, at that time is now the lawyer representing Luigi Mangione.
Wow.
Wow.
And she wouldn't listen to any of it. None of them would listen to any of it. And it gets to the point where you have to shit or get off the pot. Are you could deal. So finally, they give us a meeting with a DA, and the DA, his name is Dan Rather, as in son of Dan Rather.
Dan Rather.
and they said, basically, we'll give you a year, okay? A year in jail.
Wow.
Or go to trial and get the 3.5. And he's guilty in the sense that he had a loaded gun.
Right.
And so there's a lot of stress to go back and forth. How do you handle this? What do you do? And, and it's causing a lot of strain, a lot of sleepless nights. And when it got time where the case was being adjourned for trial and he has to make a decision, he calls me, I guess the day before we had to inform them what we were doing. The trial was a week later or something. Calls me from Florida. And he says, I prayed last night, and I, prayed to Jesus and all this and about what do I do? And he said, we're going forward. And he's like, I trust you. And okay, fine. Hung up the phone, and I just wanted to puke. If this guy goes down, he's going to think God's been lying to him, kind of thing.
Right.
And so that is a lot of pressure, but it's the blessing and the curse. So we tried the case, and the judge had called us up before the case started, and he's all nervous, and he looks at me and he says at the bench, what's at stake here, and there's no, and I'm like, we're going, we're here.
Yep.
And so we tried the case. He testified, his girlfriend testified. And when I tell you he testified well, I mean, he was like Forrest Gump. And I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just
Yeah.
so wholesome. And even in Manhattan, where when a prosecutor shows a jury a gun, usually the jurors turn into pumpkins and freak out, just because gun in New York.
Yeah.
And he was acquitted in 30 minutes.
Wow.
Was there a jury?
A jury acquitted him in 30 minutes.
Wait a second. I need to know the elements of this offense now and how you were able to pull this
Clearly,
off.
jury, it was nullification, right? It
Right.
had to.
No, the defense was he literally had the gun, but the jury instruction is that he had to be actually aware, consciously aware it was in the glove box. And he wasn't, when he entered the state of New York, he was not consciously aware of that. It wasn't a thought at all.
Yeah.
And no one said, hey, make sure you don't bring a gun. It was just, he lacked knowledge with elements of nullification, obviously, on some level. And the jury, even in Manhattan, they were appalled at it. And they did the right thing, and they did the right thing quickly. And he got a nice write-up, him and his girlfriend, in the New York Post after it happened, because they were so angry. They were the nicest people. I see him every now and then on Facebook all these years later. But
that's one of those cases that really just it bolsters your faith in the system, that the jury system works. I mean, you'll get them where, Ali and I have had trials where we thought we hit it out of the park. There's no way they're going to come back with the guilty, and then they come back and convict our guy. But, it's like you get a case like that where they do the right thing and they understood the elements. And
you never want a case where the client is very religious and says, I prayed to God and spoke to God, and God said, we're doing this.
I had a very similar client. It was pretty serious charges, and the guy was like a pastor, and
without going into all the details,
we're not going to go into any of the details of the underlying crime, but
he was relying on God.
He was a hard, so much so that I had the conversation with him, and for, without getting into any kind of privileged stuff, he basically says the same thing, but he says that God spoke to him. And I'm like, when you say he spoke to you, so I start trying to delve into this. I'm like, is my guy competent to stand trial? Because, it's one thing. I'm like, look, I'm all about having faith. That's great, man. And, but when you're saying that God spoke to you, do you mean you literally heard his voice, or this is just like a feeling that you had? And he's like, oh no, he spoke to me. And I'm like, what are you supposed to do with that? And it was like, cause I think I ended up challenging his competency because I was concerned.
And the counselor had issues, but I called another, someone that I knew who had a pastor, and he's like, but everybody who's a pastor believes that's part of the thing, that at some point God has actually spoken to them. So I was wondering how that was gonna work out, but I think she took issue. We ended up getting out of it because it was just like you said. How can you direct somebody who refuses to listen?
The scary thing is too, sometimes history repeats itself. A couple of years ago, I had another one. It's kind of similar to the Florida guy. There was this huge murder case in New York where, and of course, leave it to the New York Post. They anoint nicknames for certain alleged killers and people. It is what it is. And so in New York, a few years ago, there was this big murder case of a guy who was called the duck sauce killer, like duck sauce as in Chinese
food. Yeah.
It was a big case. And the reason they called him that is because he allegedly got into all these disputes at the Chinese restaurant and complained about not getting enough duck sauce. And then the allegation was he literally went back and followed the delivery guy and shot him to death. And so he got indicted, and it was kind of a what the hell is this kind of thing? And they did a bunch of search warrants in that case. And his wife, who she's such a good person, had nothing to do with anything, just the nicest lady to this day. If she's watching, you know how I feel about you. But she had a separate residence because he had issues beyond which we don't have to get into here. Some of them have been publicized as well in the media. But in any event, they got a search warrant because he had been creeping around her apartment where he had lawful access to. He had his own key shortly after the murder. And they went into her apartment. She is like a nice registered nurse, never been in trouble, maybe not the best judgment of life mates and that kind of thing. But they searched her apartment, and in one of the closets, which was his closet, and he was a hoarder, by the way, literally, like his whole apartment was like boxes and junk, floor to ceiling. In this one closet, it was the same thing. It was boxes and shit where just like, she's like, okay, Glenn, you can have it, because he's a tough guy. And in that closet, wrapped up almost like Russian doll style in tinfoil, in a plastic bag, in a bodega bag, inside a box, inside of whatever, they found 9 loaded firearms.
Oh, shit.
And the Queens DA, they wanted, and these were clearly his guns. And it turns out his DNA was on one of the guns, and the gun boxes were at his home. They wanted to squeeze her for information about him. So they arrested her for possession of, and were prepared to send her away.
Wow.
For God knows how long, for having an arsenal in her closet. And they, she didn't know anything about what the guy had did or not done. And long story short, as that case was going on, the husband ended up killing himself because he was going to get indicted, I think, for the guns as well. And they still came after her, and they wouldn't let her go, to the point where we had to try the case like a couple of years ago. And I think she was indicted for 27 counts of whatever. And she got acquitted on 27 out of 27, as she should have. She never should have been charged.
Yep.
And those are the kinds of cases where, just, again, they're not murder cases necessarily.
Yep.
But those are the ones that just stick out as the most satisfying. I mean, not the most fun. The most fun was the representation of an FBI supervisor who was accused of being an informant for the mob and got tried for murder. But
all right, I want to hear a story about that. Before you do, I need to share this now. So this is you guys can't see it all, but this is the article. Darn it! How do I guess I can't really move it over to
you
show.
See Mark's head.
Yeah. Wait. Let me.
Who's that?
Here, wait. Hold on.
You taking you off, me off? Okay. All right. So here's the article. There's Mark.
What a nice guy he is. I mean, look at them, right?
I know. And they say, so they said a Florida man busted in the city for driving, A jury yesterday, after a jury won over by his Southern charm, cleared him. Right. And then he said, I feel so relieved. I'm blessed. When you realize you're on the brink of losing all the little things that are typically taken for granted, you suddenly realize they are not so little. But here's what some of the jurors said. It was a reasonable explanation that he put the gun in his glove compartment, never fired it, and forgot it was there. Said juror Ryan St. Clair, he had no intention of committing a crime. And then another juror, and this is the one I'm going to ask you about after I take this off and Bob comes back, but this juror said circumstances shows maybe he really didn't know he had the gun. Said juror and retired cop. And then they just go on about how his old-fashioned Southern charm in a small town. So before you tell us that other story, was there any concern about this retired cop, or were you glad to get him on the jury? Do you remember?
God, that's hard to know if I even remember. I don't remember a lot of specific reactions of jurors in any one case, other than one case when I was a prosecutor trying like a serious kidnapping. I will never forget this one juror when I was making a point connecting dots with phone records. And this is like in 2003 when it was not as sophisticated as today. And you needed big, exhibits with printing out cell phone records and connecting dots and making this argument, thinking like, are they getting this? And the one juror was looking at me, he's like, and I'm like, all right, that guy I remember. I don't remember the jurors in this case other than they, God bless them. They did the right thing.
All right. So what now? We need to hear like the most exciting story from that trial you started talking about.
So there was, there was this mob informant from the Colombo crime family in New York, which is one of the 5, families. And it was this top echelon informant for, the feds in the 60s, the 70s, and 80s. And when we got his informant file, it was amazing. I mean, he's basically was like the Mississippi burning informant. He is the guy in the story in real life that when they couldn't find, Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman, who were buried in Mississippi, they said, let's send down some, New York tough guy, put a gun in a, KKK guy who moonlights as a TV shop salesman or whatever in Mississippi. And, 30 minutes later, hey, guys, go dig over there. You'll find your bodies. Crazy guy. There was this, he was just a crazy informant. He informed about a lot of things. Stone cold killer. And the guy who handled him in the FBI was controversial in the eyes of the U.S. attorney and other prosecutors. And they, for years, had these suspicions that never went anywhere, nor should they have. And the Brooklyn DA, though, decided in about 2006 or 7 to indict him for these old murders in the 80s and 90s under the theory that rather than having his informant tell him about crime, that he was tipping off his informant about people who were going to rat out certain members of La Cosa Nostra or whatever. And then he would have them killed. The informant would have them killed. And so the Brooklyn DA brought this case right after they had been involved in another one. Do you remember the case of the so-called mob cops, Eppolito and Caracappa in New York, who were literally committing murders for the Lucchese crime family? Yep. They got thrown off that case by the U.S. attorney. So we feel like they went after this client for that. And it was just fascinating to get involved in a case like that where all the witnesses are gangsters, many of whom were presumably good guys. They had all gotten 5K1 letters. They had all cooperated with the feds in the Eastern District.
5K1 letters, for those of you that don't know, are where they're, giving information. No, that they were cooperative.
Right. Extraordinary cooperation. So wonderful that, like Sammy the Bull, right? Killed 19 people and did 5 years. That's what it feels. That's probably the best 5K1 letter.
And then you get some time off your federal charges.
Right. But getting involved in that case and like studying the organizational charts that you see on TV with the whatever.
Yep.
And of course, because you're representing a prominent retired FBI agent, you have an army of FBI agents who support you. And these are like the most fascinating people. I mean, these are like the top New York FBI guys in the 80s and 90s. And to sit around and just listen to their stories. One of them was, Joe Pistone, Donnie Brasco. Another one was, if you look them up, these people are amazing and take you on these, the Brooklyn tour of where this guy lives. This is where this was. Hearing the story of what happened about, outside of Spark Steakhouse when, John Gotti had Castellano shot, all of that. It was just definitely the most fun, fascinating case to be involved with and the most interesting people. And it was great. It was just a blast. And the case got dismissed mid-trial. Literally.
Wow.
That's
on
how
a defense motion or?
the prosecutor had to dismiss it because their star witness was the ex-wife of the now dead informant, who claimed, the defendant told me this, and all, it was all ridiculous. And she lied on the stand. And during the trial, we got contacted by two very, very prominent New York reporters who, if people from New York will know them, a guy named Tom Robbins, who passed away actually not too long ago. He was kind of like a New York muckraker, great journalist, a legend, the Village Voice, I believe, for years, and an organized crime reporter named Jerry Capizzi, who's the most famous organized crime reporter in the U.S. They were writing a book with this witness years before, and she told an entirely different story, entirely different to them, and they had recordings. And to their credit, they waited and waited, and when she said it on the stand, they came forward and said, we can't in good conscience allow this to go unnoticed. And so we learned about it. We filed all kinds of subpoenas, They gave us the recordings, and I will never forget sitting in the Brooklyn DA's office with the chief of their rackets bureau and co-counsel and other people as they're listening to this recording. Oh, he had nothing to do with it. He had nothing to do with it. Greg said the reason that, Mary Barry was killed was because And to see the look on their face, it just sunk.
Man.
And so they had to skulk back into court the next day in the middle of trial and be like, we're done here.
See, I mean, that's back when you had because obviously it's pre social media the way it is now, where people are reaching out and sending you stuff. You almost get too much stuff now by way of tips, but that you had the media being actually investigative, doing their investigative reporting.
The crazy thing is we chose a bench trial in that case, which I'm a big advocate. I think we've talked about this before in certain situations. And the issue in this case about whether to go bench was that the judge was this brilliant character. He was the nicest guy. He passed away, unfortunately, from cancer years ago. But he was the most gentlemanly, scholarly, but just as left as it gets. Yeah. So left that he was one of the Columbia SDS, in the 60s people. Literally one of the student people who took over Columbia University in 1968 or whatever. And the debate internally was, are we really going to do a bench trial on a decorated, supervisory special agent of the FBI who's been accused of murder in front of, an ex-hippie, basically, who's fight the power, I hate the government, here comes the fuzz. And we did, but he never had to render a decision. I mean, we know what he would have done, but It didn't even get that far. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Does classic overthinkers question, what's that mean to you?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what he's talking about. So I don't actually represent John Juke at the moment. I did from about 2012 to maybe 24, so for 12 years post-conviction. I believe he's actually innocent. He's wrongfully convicted in Brooklyn, and we reinvestigated his case, actually got it reversed, and then the New York Court of Appeals reinstated it. And there was all this back and forth litigation that went on for so many years. And, I've heard of Tommy Dades. He was involved in the FBI case. And that's probably all I should say about him.
That's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, actually, we cross-examined him during the pre-trials in that case, and that's a story for another day. But Juka is innocent. He'll get his day, I have no doubt. I'm very close with his mother. Some of you may have heard the story. She's the one who went undercover, posed as a younger woman, got close to a juror on the case who told her all kinds of inappropriate things. And that case has so many twists and turns. And they used a jailhouse informant who lied through his teeth. The prosecutor did, certainly in our view, terrible things. She bragged and bragged for years about she never lost a trial, and that was how she marketed herself in the media. And she's kind of a true crime person. I'm not going to mention her name. Safe to say we don't send each other Christmas cards, but yeah, no, that case is dirty as hell, and he'll get his day. He will.
Yeah, I mean, leading into the live, classic overthinker was just like relentlessly asking me to ask you about that. So I'm glad you threw it out there.
That case would require. We always thought that case warranted like a serial type podcast. Like it literally. I mean, you had witnesses to that murder in 2003 in Brooklyn that the Brooklyn DA later hired as an assistant district attorney. I shit you not. Even though she was not truthful during the trial. And I mean, I could go on and on with how gross and bad that case was, but it's getting picked apart, and it will. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, I've never heard of it. I've never heard of that case. I'm definitely going to look into
called it the Grid Kid again, New York Post, right? They called it the Grid Kid murder case because the young man who was killed in that case was a 19-year-old college football player who had never even been to Brooklyn. And on the first night there,
wow.
Unfortunately, by all accounts, he was like an all-American, just perfect kid. It's a terrible case all around.
Yeah, I probably like going back to the duck sauce murder guy. Like that probably would be me and Ali when they'd stiff us on hot mustard. Every time we order Chinese, we get super pissed. It's like what we're calling them back.
Oh yeah, you don't go shoot them though. I mean, yeah. The reality of this, that guy Glenn, he never got tried. He was fighting his case. Whatever. But we'll never know. But I mean, the assumption is that by the general public is that he obviously is responsible for that death.
I mean. Yeah. It seems that way. It seems that way. All right. So
I've got to read. Or go ahead. What were you going to say, babe?
I would go like in the general rule, just so you all know out there, Mark's in active litigation with Aidan's case. We're not going to get into any of the details about that. We're not going to ask him anything about Aidan's case. We did the live yesterday on his most recent motion to compel. I only have one question for you. Kyle Sharkey, who's the resident everything document guy, had sent me something. Something got filed today. So there was 141 and 142. They look to be the same to me. Is there any difference? It's a housekeeping question, and then I'm not going to ask you anything else.
It's a housekeeping answer. Substantively, no. There are some minor tweaking and little administrative details and things, but
so use 142. That sounds like
it is. I'm sure the other one will get pulled off. I mean, it's not without getting into too much detail. It's not meant to be taken as read in conjunction with. In essence, right. It replaces because there's just a few minor things that we wanted to tweak around for various reasons. But in terms of, yes, it's true what we said or what my opinion of what the evidence shows about Proctor and his involvement in the case, nothing has changed substantively, literally nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, but I do have a question if you can answer, because I know you said some broad strokes you can. And if you can't, maybe you can give us another example. I just want to talk about the interplay, either with Aidan specifically, if you can, or however you can, of your constitutional right to your rights under the First Amendment, your rights to, there's every time that they put in something where they say there was a rally and there were protesters, I'm over here screaming picketing activity. I mean,
wow, your tagline,
my own
petitioning
activity. But how does your constitutional right, does that in turn, when does that become a defense when you're charged with something? If you can't speak maybe specifically in Aidan's case, maybe you can give us an example.
Well, I think it's definitely relevant in a case like this or another case, with the caveat that you don't traditionally see people who report on matters of public concern and accuse government officials of corruption and covering up a crime, also involving, as he alleged, other civilians, get prosecuted for that and other things that they add on. Being obnoxious is not a crime, as you know, and swearing is not a crime. Being immature is not a crime. And people like you and me don't have to agree with everything that clients or other people do, but still recognize the answer isn't always just arrest him, whatever.
Right.
So certainly, without getting into the full role of what the First Amendment would do in any legal defense, I mean, it's there. It's a living, breathing thing in the case, and you can't ignore it. You can't ignore that, for example, without, again, getting into too much detail, but if you go after someone who is acting in a journalistic capacity because he's criticizing you, I mean, we already have a problem. I mean,
Right.
Like, for example, no person reporting the news should be, whether it's in good faith or bad faith, be prosecuted by the very agency and individuals that you're accusing of being corrupt. I mean, that's like, 1930s Alabama type stuff that you shouldn't see in modern day sophisticated Massachusetts. So, a jury is going to have to be, in any case, aware of the fact that if somebody has a First Amendment right to ask questions and approach and do things and say things that are offensive, and of course you have to weigh it against their intent under any particular criminal statute, which again, I probably shouldn't say more, but you can't divorce any of this from the fact that in the case you're talking about, if somebody's acting in a news gathering capacity or news reporting capacity, and also is very adamant about free speech, obnoxious or not, that doesn't make any particular act result in, you're trying to essentially obstruct justice.
And I think I can give like a totally separated example because it's like a case that I am recently working on. But like, you have the right to make your own medical decisions. You have the autonomy to that. But I have a case where a woman's charged with refusing for resisting arrest, for refusing to go with the police on you're being committed, right? So a forced commitment and medical, go to the hospital, get evaluated, da 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 da. So part of that was they didn't follow the right procedures, things like that. But I'm raising how it's by charging her with this under this scenario, it's violating her constitutional rights. So sometimes, even when something might be a crime, if you have the constitutional right to assert whatever it is you're asserting, that can become a defense. I'm sort of saying, like, let's explain to the people how that works just generally.
Well, I'm trying to avoid as best I can.
Right, that's why I was trying to give you a whole nother scenario.
Trying to avoid stepping on the third rail, as they say. But part of the issue that could arise in any particular case where somebody is criticizing government officials and others is the integrity of any particular prosecution, and whether it's in good faith or bad faith. And, obviously, if somebody is being prosecuted because you're trying to silence them, or you're trying to, in your mind, as the government, do things that you think they should do and they don't want to do, in your example, should they really arrest her because she doesn't want to go, to be involuntarily committed? Whatever the law is on that, I'm not even sure, like, if that's considered an arrest. So how do you resist? I don't know. But there's also like this thing called discretion. And I mean, I don't know whatever happened to her, but why send her to criminal court to deal with this nonsense if she was being committed for mental health reasons and having, problems? Right. Now it makes not everything needs to be criminal. And that's kind of going back to the other case, hypothetically, is, the conduct alleged a lot of it anyway, occurred months before there were arrests. And it would be wise for people to just look at timelines of what happens before, during, and up leading to an event, and then how it results in, person X needs to be arrested. And if these were problems months before, why was there no arrest? And, I wonder if, in that hypothetical, if people realize, because this is not really a crime, the fact that people get upset or are angry or pursue other avenues, and then ultimately you say, well, this is a problem. What are we going to do? And, in that kind of stuff may very well come out. And some of that, may be addressed in what you were covering yesterday in black ink. But,
Yeah.
And then, maybe this is something that you can shift and talk to. If you look at the Reed and Kearney defamation suits, maybe not I mix them up sometimes, but where they're alleging a conspiracy to defame. So yeah, I think that's the defamation suits. As I'm reading,
every civil litigation is alleging the same thing, just with different legal issues. But at the end of the day, yeah.
So when I'm looking at that and I see in their very pleadings, they say words like Karen Reed, essentially, I'm summarizing, like Karen Reed lied to Aidan Kearney and told him that the evidence was stronger than it was, and that they had him dead, had the house, the should have been suspects dead to rights or whatever, that they're claiming in their wording that she is lying to him to make him think she is innocent. I'm saying, how are you saying that that is a conspiracy? That right there, the fact that she's lying to, that they're saying it, that's what they're claiming. He's lying to her. How can they say they are in a conspiracy together to lie?
So I probably shouldn't talk about that because I'm involved in that case.
Oh, you are in that one. Okay.
In the defamation case, I am. But what I would say, and this is broad stroke generally, there are some real misconceptions just about how journalists who cover criminal cases work and how getting source information works and whatnot. And it doesn't have to be the case you're talking about. This goes with anything.
Yep.
Journalists who cover cases, they want to get sources, obviously, to get information. And there are different levels of sources. What I can tell you is this. If you are a journalist covering a high-profile criminal case and you have as a source the defendant, that is the gold standard of gold standard of gold standards journalistically. That's incredible. I mean, if in any particular case, including the one you're talking about or any other one, if the New York Post or the New York Times could get that type of access, they would love it. Anybody would. And it doesn't matter that it's somebody who's less traditionally, in any particular situation, a journalist. And the mere fact that, again, a criminal defendant speaks to a journalist and provides source information is as interesting and as ordinary as, tomorrow is going to be a day that ends in Y. That is not unique. It's not nefarious. It's not bad. It's normal. It's what happens every day. And when you see allegations of, in other cases where, oh my God, you go on Twitter and you see some of the Twitter lawyers and say, oh my God, this, including some who are a lot closer to you geographically than me, maybe next door, maybe in the state taking your football team.
I know who you speak of.
Yeah. And you just see this, you take a break, you go through and you say, my God, oh my God, there's like messages between lawyers on a criminal case and a journalist. And you say, that happens every day. Like,
so
I mean, that's called good journalism, to get kind of sources. And if a lawyer talks to the journalist and they make the judgment to do it, that's fine. I mean, if you have messages where the lawyer is telling the journalist, what I want you to do is lie and say this, even though it's not true. Okay, fine. That's not ethical, clearly. But these people who think they have this aha moment, because, somebody released a text message that they probably shouldn't have, whatever, which shows somebody talking to a journalist is just like, whatever. That's the way stories get reported. Without sources, you have no stories.
And from the defense side of it, a great investigative journalist can be your best friend. You know what I'm saying? I mean, theoretically, they're going out there and digging up things that can be very helpful in theory.
Of course.
You know, and there's absolutely no prohibition from us talking to anybody. You know, it's one thing, you know, we're not talking about somebody giving up privileged information. We're not talking about us sharing discovery. We're just talking about having conversations. If we're getting tips, we're allowed to hear them. We're allowed to talk to the people. It's like you said, that like kind of the Twitter school of law is.
Yeah. I mean, and you could also look at it from the perspective of the criminal defendant. If they have information that they want to tell a reporter who's going to report it and it's favorable and it helps push back to the way they're being portrayed, possibly prejudiced, you know, all kinds of due process violations and other things, why wouldn't any particular defendant want to do that if there's no impediment or legal reason that precludes them from doing so?
100%.
I mean, that's kind of normal, I think. It's certainly human nature to want to do that. And, you know, again, you can't make a conspiracy out of defendant tells journalist facts and information, journalist prints. That doesn't make it a conspiracy to do anything illegal. I mean, again, I won't talk about the specific case, but when people read into, and this is on Twitter, this is not the complaint or anything you're talking about,
Right.
that, my God, there's conversations between these people. So what?
Right. And right. So, yeah, I mean, there's a case now following heavily with Austin Drummond. He's the guy who shot 4 people. There was the whole manhunt. It was about a year and a half ago.
But it's in Tennessee.
It was down in Tennessee. At any rate, when he got arrested, he reached out to a local journalist there who is an investigative journalist, because he wanted to get his whole kind of thing out that he had been, since he was in and after he got out, he was acting as a confidential informant and was working with them to try to help, because they were drone dropping drugs into the local prison. And Drummond was like, I got made. Like, you know, he's like, I'm begging people to investigate this, vet my story. And he went out publicly to get that out there. Now the judge kind of hammered him after the fact, and they like shut him down completely. I mean, they didn't seal the case, and they didn't gag him per se.
They did gag him to a certain, they gagged him. They did
Completely.
gag him.
They did.
Well, that's
gag
why
him.
they're scared to give him some of his discovery, because they're afraid he's going to talk. So they're limiting his access to his own discovery.
I know
But-
how that works. I won't talk about that.
Right.
Yeah.
I know something like a lot of people want to know, and I'm not sure if you can answer or not, but just Shorty asked it. Can Aidan be deposed until his criminal case is not resolved?
Yeah, I can't address that. I mean, yeah, I know the answer to it, and I think all the other lawyers and 90% of the other people do too, but I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had a case where it was an embezzlement case, and my client was being sued civilly for the embezzlement because they wanted to try to recoup the money, but she was obviously also charged as well, and it was the same situation. So I had that thing where the civil lawyers were pushing for, you know, and they were simultaneous. They were happening at the same time, and they were pushing for the DEP. And I'm like, you know, and I kept going in on the civil case and motioning the judge. And I'm like, look, like, I can't have her give a DEP right now. Like, I mean, what are you kidding me? It's like, it's got a Fifth Amendment right. I'm like, but what we're talking about freedom versus money anyway, as a general proposition, they can wait, you know, let's have our day in court on the criminal matter. And so, yeah, it's, those are sticky situations sometimes.
I mean, the criminal case is always going to trump the
priority. Yeah, absolutely.
At the end of the day, you know, going into the can is more concerning than cutting a check for whatever.
100%. Like, no question about it. So in terms of like I do, and tell me whether or not you can talk about it generally. The Proctor material, man, and the only thing I'm going to say, and it's going to be the last thing we talk about with respect to Aidan's cases, as you know, we went through that yesterday on our live, and I thought it was brilliant the way that you were able to kind of really narrow the focus of it to Proctor. You know, like I liked the fact that you kind of took the McCabe and the Albert aspect out of it, and you made it all about Proctor in terms of the heart of it. And you know, that email, that paragraph 16, I think it was, to me, it was the heart of the motion, man. And it was so well done, because I think that just, it cleared up
the memos that were sent and give me your input. And
yeah. More correct information is coming.
Yeah.
And just establishing that he had an investigative role, and like Bob says, taking the McCabe's out of it, but also kind of taking Karen Reed out of it and saying you can see bias towards him directly for
personal
exactly
animus.
Right.
I will one little vignette about those messages, because I mean they're public and discussed. And this is part of just the problem in Norfolk County, and why you just never know whether you get what you're entitled to, and you're just at their mercy. We only got those messages when we did because the FOIA master herself, Corey Hawkins, did incredible work making all these freedom of information requests, pushing the pedal to the metal, not letting them come up for air, enforcing every right she had to the material. But take away from that, and the bottom line is this. Obviously, that material was discoverable and relevant to our case.
Yep.
We forgot it.
Right.
But somebody who has nothing to do with the case makes a freedom of information request. Here you go.
Right.
Is a problem. And that's not the only time that has happened. And if she didn't do that, presumably we wouldn't even know about it. And again, without getting into too much detail, the submission speaks for itself mostly. Certainly from our perspective, it's hard to argue that someone's not involved in the investigation when his direct supervisor is sending him materials related to the investigation and seeking your input on what should I change, if anything. In other words, what do I have wrong and what do you know? Tell me, and I'll send it back to you. And I mean, I won't get into more detail than that, but that's a very strong point.
It's a tough sell for the Commonwealth.
Right. No, but it's nothing to be overshadowed. The fact that they know these things exist, they supposedly have been through everything, and yet did not turn over something that is directly, obviously, unquestionably relevant. When you have Cosgrove standing up, screaming and shouting, he played no role. He played no role. We don't have to turn this stuff over. And then they withhold that kind of stuff, especially in light of him saying that. It as Mark pointed out, it begs the question: how can we trust them to disclose what needs to be disclosed when, but for somebody else going out and doing the hard work and doing a FOIA request, we wouldn't even know it exists.
Listen,
so
when it comes to Norfolk County, I mean, I could give you 100 examples. You've heard them all, but you can't even trust them. And going to Karen's case, to disclose a video of, in essence, the ultimate crime scene, the famous Sally Port with, the murder weapon, if you will. You can't even trust them to give you the proper version and show what it really shows. And two, you can't even trust them to elicit, non-perjurious testimony about it, because you're asking, is this a fair and accurate portrayal, and da-da-da-da-da. And if that didn't come out, that's what the evidence would have been. I mean, and then you try to get to the bottom of it. And what do they find out, a year later? according to Adam Lally. Well, I never knew because, Proctor had it the whole time and he just never gave it to us. And then you have a judge who, in that situation, doesn't even grant a hearing on the motion to dismiss, not even for the limited purpose of finding out whether it was intentional. Because if it was, that certainly would warrant severe sanctions up to and including dismissal potentially. And everybody just shrugs their shoulders when, a year ago when Lally did that hearing in that one case, King actually, and explained how he and Proctor, between the two of them, apparently couldn't figure out how to disclose a search warrant in complete form, as opposed to 2 out of 6 pages over the course of a year. And, Lally's attitude was like, I don't know. And then Proctor was subpoenaed for that hearing, and he just didn't show up because I'm on vacation. And then what happened? Nothing. It just got, and that's what happens in all of these cases. There's so much fast moving stuff, so much craziness. Stuff just gets lost in the ether. It gets forgotten. It gets ignored. And he doesn't show up. We know about his deposition in the other case. This stuff should not be tolerated. Right. And so much of this happens, in that county. The deposition, in all fairness, is a different county, but that's just because they sued in another county.
Right.
But so is anything, because I think Alan Jackson sent something to whatever the equivalent to like a disciplinary committee at some point. Like, do we know, is anything that Lally did being investigated? Because he did present false evidence at a trial. I mean,
don't forget, during Karen's 2 trials, in the eyes of the court, Lally and Brennan did absolutely nothing unethical or wrong with all we talked about. But the pro hoc was threatened to be stripped, and sanctions hearings and disciplinary actions filed against very skilled, very ethical out-of-state lawyers because you used signal. And and this is like crazy if you're watching this from the outside to say that is what the court deems a significant ethical violation when it's not even close.
Grave concerns.
But what Lally did, or even in the second trial, when Lally sat there like a potted plant when Brennan was doing his shenanigans with the jersey that by the other one and some other stuff, and he just sat there. He was every bit as obligated to stand up as an officer of the court and say, actually, my guy, you're not doing this the right way. And he just, instead stood down and like twirled a pencil and just, pretends. I mean,
is it possible a judiciary committee is looking into Judge Cannone because of, because I know it's retrospect, but in retrospect, had she taken some of these issues more seriously, it would have brought to light some of the actual real corruption. And you'd think judges would want that vetted the fuck out.
It's so fascinating because I remember this watching the first trial when the Sallyport fiasco.
Oh, man. It was unbelievable.
Real time. And I don't even remember who I was talking to. Because we were watching it and they said, well, what's going to happen? And silly me, not fully understanding how Massachusetts really works. And I'm getting there. I'm
with you. I was like,
I'm still using crayons from time to time, but I'm getting there. But watching that hearing, and I said, yeah, this trial's over. This is absolutely mistrial. And they said, why do you say that? And I said, let me tell you what would happen in New York City. The judge would stand up and say, get the jury out of here, right? They're gone. And then look at the prosecutor and say, you have 5 minutes to convince me not to basically end this case right now with prejudice and personally report you to the disciplinary committee and And it never happened, obviously. And in Massachusetts, it was just like, whatever. You'll deal with it on cross. But then, if you remember on cross, and I remember this because I looked at the transcripts, because, there was a time where, I might have been involved in, the second version of this.
I remember those days.
So do I. But if you go back and look at the transcript, there was an attempt to cross-examine Buchanan, who was the witness who was on the hook for this,
saying
about when
fair and truthful representation of the event.
But he was being asked properly, did you and Lally talk about this? Like, how did you prep? When did you prep? What happened? And she shut it all down. She would not allow a lawyer who just got sandbagged in the worst way possible with false evidence that they claimed was true and accurate to say, well, maybe, this is intentional. I mean, it was stunning.
Unbelievable.
To see. That is outrageous. And that's the kind of thing where we're saying we see judges too often shutting down what, not only is relevant for the jury to hear and relevant in a criminal prosecution, but shutting down even outside of a jury, like in the King case, trying to get you not to say, oh, don't say that text out loud, just trying to shut down the search for truth and vetting out corruption. And it's just so ridiculous. And I'm glad that you at least believe in New York this wouldn't get stood for. They would say, no, we need to,
See, they have a thing in New York called rules of evidence. And
Did they actually apply? Yeah.
So they have a thing in New York called the Rosario rule, a case of, People versus Rosario. By the way, I noticed in the, after, how sometimes you find typos after you submit a document and you're like, damn it, why did I not include that? In one place, I think I wrote people instead of Commonwealth. The brain is still not
right.
fully there, but they have this thing called the Rosario rule, which is the discovery rule about any witness statements have to be disclosed before this. And the law used to be it's an automatic reversal. And now materiality works a little more into it, but every judge is prepared to throw a shit fit if you certify compliance with everything, and then except for the video I didn't turn over on time, and then when I did in the middle of trial, it's backwards and in a way that doesn't help you but helps us. I just couldn't believe that anywhere that would not even raise concern. I mean, there was no reaction in the courtroom at all from the people that you would have thought would have been absolutely concerned. And the reality is the judge should have taken Lally to the carpet. I mean, literally to the carpet. And I've seen situations in New York where they call the district attorney or call the supervisor or call whoever, get me somebody, anything, do something. I'm going to have a hearing on this. I'm going to and it was just well, you'll have the lunch break to, fix it. And then you can do your cross. And you're like, wow.
Man, think about it like this. Think about if the shoe was on the other foot. Think about if the defense had pulled some shit like that, what would have happened in that courtroom?
What would have happened.
Like you said, we saw it with Alan with the
signal messages were a problem.
It was insane. And Alice and I were screaming because one of their excuses, that Sally Port, that camera, it was putting out those reverse images for a year. And we're sitting there screaming, okay.
And tell them that.
Well, yeah, but bigger than that, I wanted them to provide one other case wherein they had tendered discovery to the defense showing that video was in fact reversed.
Or any other courtroom where they tried to put it up and realized it was reversed. They showed another video and said, see here, it's reversed, but there was no proof that they actually tendered it beforehand. You can reverse anything after the fact.
You know that this is sketchy because, again, I hope I'm not conflating the trials and everything, but in the direct examination in the first trial where Buchanan, he's got his arm up on the rail, laying back, all, cool customer, basically was adamant and confident in identifying himself and Proctor and the tow truck driver. But when the shit hit the fan and this was clearly, a fakakta video and something's not right here, and it came time to like reaffirm on cross, all of a sudden, yeah, I don't know who that was, and I didn't say that, and these people. I mean, look, this is the same guy who swore up and down in the second trial that Michael Proctor was not the lead investigator.
I mean, yeah, we were just talking about that yesterday. I've never seen so many people at a trial just fight that the lead investigator was the lead investigator and try to call him something else and then say he did everything with integrity and
whatever
something else.
Buchanan said.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he like Buchanan had gone so far as to evaluate, like he did an evaluation of Proctor and said he was of the highest integrity and the man, the saint. Yeah. You know, I mean, it was unbelievable.
Listening to this at the second trial, and all you're waiting is for somebody to cue up the national anthem. I mean, it was
100%.
absurd. It was just absurd.
It was insane.
Did this actually happen today? Lazy says, somewhat safer topic. What do you all think about the motion to compel Collins' appearance for depo being denied today? Is that happened today?
I'm not aware.
I'm not aware either. I
mean, they must have not been able to get a hold of him. The judge is going to have to do something because, look, I do think there is some validity to the fact that you shouldn't have to depose your people out of order. I mean, I guess you could have something like, all right, depose everybody, and if something new comes out of Collins, then I'm going to give you leave to do a second deposition. But I just don't think the defendant should be being told you have to depose these people out of the order that you wanted when you think you're going to get something you need from deposition of Collin in a later deposition.
Well, just remember that, I mean, obviously he's a non-party in where they're trying to lure him in now, but, you know, he is a named plaintiff in the defamation case. He's going to have to deal with that.
Right.
And there are 2 trials coming down the pipeline in criminal term in which he is an alleged victim of witness intimidation. So he's going to have to make a lot of court appearances on, you know, 4, 5, or 6 different cases over the next God knows how long.
All right. So Kyle sent it to me. I'll just read through it real quickly, the order. And it says, the motion to compel Colin Albert to attend a deposition is denied without prejudice, subject to receipt of further information as to availability from his counsel. The motion to compel Colin Albert to produce responsive documents is allowed as follows. And then he gives some timelines. So essentially, the judge needs more intel, it sounds like. You know, I mean, the guy's in basic training right now. So I like, you know, I don't know how that works. I mean, once you're in there, you know, they're not letting you dip out of a day of basic training. Like you're stuck like Chuck. So you know, it's the timing of it is certainly specious, but I don't think it's, you know, him. Like maybe the guy was wanting to join. I have no idea. I don't know.
I'm not going to discuss.
Yeah.
All
right. So as we kind of start wrapping up, because I've kept you long enough,
I got to hop off real quick. Sorry, guys.
Okay. I want to talk to you about, in general, what was uncovered about Proctor and who he is fundamentally as a human being. And, you know, I have some long thoughts. I know you have some long thoughts in terms of just, number one, the fact that we were able to see behind the curtain, which is such a rare occasion in terms of some of these guys that have guns and badges that are walking out there with that incredible amount of power that they have, and just how terrifying it is. But specifically, you know, I mean, Rosemary went into court and she's put it out there. She's like, it's my mindset that everything he's ever touched, that every conviction should be reversed, you know, you know, and that's a huge, terrifying ask, because I'm sure that some of the people that are in there are deserving of being in there. But in terms of what he touched, I mean, I think you have to look at everything, don't you?
I think you have to look at everything. I'm not going to go so far as to say that literally every case he touched should be dismissed. I mean, if there's a case of a horrible murder case where, you know, 3 state troopers responded and some guy took the lead, another guy helped out, and Proctor was with him, but he was staring at the wall, picking his nose, I'm not going to say that, Proctor had any involvement in anything that could have materially affected the outcome of the case. And I think that would be just profoundly unfair to the murder victim and his family or her family in that situation. Having said that, there are going to probably be some very angry victims, advocates, and victim family members where there are cases where Proctor was involved. But even then, in order to get the case reversed, there's a lot that has to happen. I mean, I've done a lot of post-conviction stuff.
Yep.
It's not easy. I mean, first of all, you'd have to be able to establish, when did these messages occur? Should the prosecution have known or not known? Was it in their actual possession? Should they have been aware? Did they not disclose? Did that non-disclosure, affect the outcome on whatever standard would apply? If the messages could not have been in the possession of the DA at the time, is there an argument that this is newly discovered evidence, and had the jury known the truth about what a just raging racist, anti-Semite, misogynist, neo-Nazi, whatever else you believe he may
all
be?
the things. Yeah.
Might that have impacted? The problem with Proctor is it's not that he's like a racist, a misogynist, just a disgusting human being. I think everyone agrees and accepts that. The problem is he had a gun and a badge, all the power of the state. And then the second problem is with that power and with the terrible things in his head and his heart, there is evidence in the messages that have been published that it has actually influenced judgment. He did it to Karen.
Yep.
I'm not going to get into its impact on Aidan because I can't.
Right.
That in his sick and twisted mind, he was fine leaving a black man or woman dead on the street who perhaps could have been saved. I don't even know what happened to that person, but he felt they were not worth living because it's just a black person. He joked about whether I should summons or arrest someone, making sure you call them a derogatory term, which implies, he doesn't talk like this about white people or other people. If you're a sexual assault victim in that county, I mean, this guy is giving you the playbook on how to do it. I mean, ply him with alcohol, right? Give him a roofie, do this, do that. I mean, this is a guy who is literally bragging about his attempts to commit non-consensual sexual assault.
Unbelievable.
He knows. He talks about planning evidence. Do I take him at face value? Yeah, I do, because I saw trials and know what the evidence is. And you know what? One of the reasons she was acquitted is because a lot of people think he planted evidence or knew and participated in it. He joked about switching or swapping nudes. Now, how does that sound now, knowing if they had known about it before? You could just go on and on with this guy. He is just gross and
terrifying.
And there's plenty of people, I'm sure, that are gross, but a gun, a badge. And then you get to the whole thing about like the state police, how the hell they hired this guy. He didn't get hired by the Boston police. They rejected him because of something bad in his background search. And if, you kind of have to look to the second layer of the messages that are out there, but he talks about that with his buddies and says, they may ask you about this. Are we good? Which tells you he knows something is in his past. And when he didn't get hired by the Boston police, what's his response? It's what you'd expect. Racist, derogatory comments about this person. And, you take a step back and you see, Karen is a whack job, whatever, that he wishes would just harm herself and all the other terrible things he said.
Right.
He called Alan an asshole. He called David, an asshole. All right. I'm not going to tell you what he said about our guy. That'll come out in due course. We know what he said about other people generally. We know that he was the lead detector on the King case and who does not look like you and me.
No.
And all that racism is going to be admissible. It has to be. I mean, and you know, it's just these people, though, you know, again, whether it's Twitter lawyers or trolls or just online agitators looking for attention, who say, well, that doesn't prove anything about, you know, Karen's guilt or anyone else's. You people need to understand that it goes to credibility, okay? And that if you are discredited about certain things, a jury may very well not believe you about everything or other things. And you could even make a gradation of credibility on what's more important and less, okay? The fact that he might have gotten away with a speeding ticket one time, okay, that's down the chart. But if he's the lead investigator against Karen Reed and he's talking about her, she's a whack job, this, I hate her, I wish she would kill herself, da 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 da. That is actual bias, okay? It's not proof of a conspiracy, you dopes. It's actual bias. And the argument isn't that that is proof of a conspiracy. The argument is that it shows that he has actual bias against this particular person, which gives him a motive to falsify and fabricate and a defense attorney to make the argument that he might have done that. And then in Karen's case, you say, and guess what? He lied about the time they left with her tow truck. Was that a scrivener's error? Maybe. Or maybe the guy who thinks Karen is a whack job, who I hate her and I want her to die, maybe he fudged that time to tighten the apparent timeline to make it less likely that the vehicle was in his possession. And then you go with the taillight stuff. Okay, why is he the only guy on the planet who recovered pieces of glass on the bumper that don't match the glass that would have been on the bumper? Okay, and then you say that doesn't make any sense. But wait a minute, I hate that whack job C. Don't worry about the guy who owns the house. He's good. That's why it matters, people. You have to be able to handle more than one thought at one time, okay? And if you do that, it's called marshaling the evidence. It's stacking one point on top of another one and making a clear, cogent, general argument. So when you scream and yell and say, okay, Proctor's a jerk, but there's no evidence of a conspiracy. Well, not literally. No, he didn't type and say, let's frame her. You're right.
Right.
But it's his actions, not his words, which get tacked upon proof of his actual bias. And that works with juries. I don't know how to tell you people, it does. And it's going to work on a very high level for Miles King. And he may very well get away with murder. I don't know.
I mean, there's a damn good shot of it. You know, and it's that thing when you think about it, even on a witness to witness scenario wherein Proctor's got two witnesses and say one is a white woman and one's a black woman, and he's going to disregard whatever the black woman's saying, and he's going to take what the white woman is saying just based solely on the color of their skin as gospel. It's a huge problem.
And imagine that point being made by a skilled lawyer like Scapiccio, who is going to fill it with examples of why you should listen to what I'm saying and read these messages and talk about the evil in his heart and how it translates to his head and leads to his actions. That you think if a guy who's willing to, in the middle of a traffic stop, step aside, literally step aside, text his buddies, drop a few derogatory N-words or permutations of the N-word that I'd never even heard of. Didn't even know it existed. And,
I was glad you put that footnote in there because I had never heard of that one term.
Google it. I mean, I'm not afraid to say that, but that he literally Googled his friends to say, yeah, am I going to give him a summons or an arrest? If you can't see that on something stupid like that might lead him to be corrupt on something much more important, where there's already evidence that doesn't make sense. You know, the ARCA stuff makes the prosecution's theory not make sense. When he towed the car, imagine like, in Karen's case, not taking a photo of the taillight when he first saw it.
It's inexplicable.
Okay, you don't need the police officer to know that, all right? My 10-year-old daughter would know to take out her iPhone and she doesn't have an iPhone, that's not true, to take my phone,
right,
and take a picture. The point is, when he doesn't do these things, whether it's the King case or Karen's case, all roads are going to lead back to his poor credibility, which is based on problems with his bias, which gives him a motive to lie, a motive to favor one side over the other. And if, again, Twitter lawyers, today's your lucky day. If you need to hear it from better authority than me, you should look up Davis versus Alaska. It's a famous Supreme Court case from 1974, where the U.S. Supreme Court, in talking about forms of impeachment and credibility, talk about the difference between specific bias that shows an actual bias against the defendant or somebody like the defendant, and general bias, such as that witness has a criminal record, and why specific bias is always relevant. Okay. Yep. Always. So that's what we're talking about with Proctor. Not that it literally proves a conspiracy, but it leads an attorney to make an argument that, is it really so hard to believe? And the answer is no.
No.
His track record, what he says, what he does, and what the actual evidence is that supports the lawyer making the argument. It's really not that complicated.
It's really not. And the answer is resoundingly no. I mean, you can't, he's a poison pill. Like, if he wouldn't have been terminated, you know, he's a guy that nobody can put on the stand. He's on a no call list. You know, I mean, he's that dirty of a cop where you just simply can't call him. You know, you saw it in Baltimore. I talk about that gun trace task force thing with those guys, and like the whole corruption issues in Baltimore. They got to the point where they didn't have any cops that they could call for trials. That's how bad it was, because of the lack of faith from the citizens towards the police force was completely eroded, to the point where they literally couldn't have trials because they didn't have cops to call. And you know what? We're talking about Proctor, but you know, I saw enough in those text messages, and I kept telling him, like, this guy's not a one-off. Like this is pervasive within that culture in that department. And I'm talking about MSP. Obviously, Canton, maybe not as much, because we only got messages with only one dude. I'm happy. It's
important. That's another point that, you know, we emphasize more as an afterthought for purposes of this motion. But we need to know, where does this go? Where does it lead to? And who received these messages? And equally, or even more importantly, how did they respond?
Right.
I mean, if he's talking about, you know, I'm planting evidence and going to stick I'm going to Abner Louis with someone, and, you know, I'll just take him in. And somebody who else is investigating this case or connected to it is like, right on. Well, now it's a whole nother thread of danger. Okay. Are there messages between him and civilian witnesses? I don't know. We don't know, because we don't get anything.
Right.
And all we're doing is saying the defense gets to decide how to use it. But if it's in your possession, clearly the case has been made that it's relevant to his credibility. And, you know, some of these messages may be inadmissible, some may be admissible, but we have to still see it to
100%.
know.
Absolutely.
And if you know, the prosecutor objects, they object, and a judge rules. That's how a trial works. But a fair trial includes giving the defense the favorable evidence, letting them decide how to use it, and then the DA and court, you know, have an ability to be heard, and ultimately a judge decides. But you can't, like, hide the ball in the first instance. I mean, how does that office, and I'm talking about the DA's office as a whole, not the special prosecutor, how do they not just say to anyone who even remotely has a case with Proctor, hold their nose and say, here it is, you know, put it under a protective order if it's appropriate, but here you go. You decide whether there's relevant evidence or not, and then we decide whether we agree, and ultimately the judge decides whether a jury hears it. Why is this so complicated?
Right. Well, you know what? When Rosemary was in on that King hearing and she asked that question to the judge, I mean, it literally made the hair on my arm stand up. She's like, what are we protecting here? And like that is the baseline question. What in the hell are we protecting here? And that goes up to the judiciary. It goes to every prosecutor in those offices. What are we protecting here? Is this what you want it to be? Because if it is, we've got bigger problems than I even knew existed. You know what I mean? And it's the fundamental question. What exactly are we protecting? Because I tell people, on our channel all the time, we tread very, very cautiously if we're going to attack cops in a trial. It's like if we're going to go after a prosecutor in terms of saying, look, we think they may have done something unethical or untoward, or, it's a Brady because you have other clients, right? And like you have these working relationships in counties that you practice a lot in, and you don't want some kind of ramifications for clients that aren't involved with the current litigation that you're dealing with, feeling some kind of after effect from that, because that prosecutor no longer will work with me because I've called him out or threw him under the bus, or, like a judge is coming at us because we're impeaching the credibility of a cop who's testified in front of me for 20 years, and it's like you get that pushback. And it's always been that question for me, like, what are we protecting here? It's like, we just want fair trials. That's really all we're asking for from the defense side of it. I want a fair shake. That's it. It's simple.
At this point, it is now open to the public that this guy had a state-issued gun and shield and the full support of them at a time that he was a raging, emotionally unstable, in my view, raging racist, misogynist, homophobe, anti-Semitic, neo-Nazi, go on and on. Look, the things he said, the things he did, the way his behavior was influenced, that is a matter of public concern. That is much more important than any one case. Not that a case being impacted is not important, but this guy was running around with the blessing of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, openly saying he wants to essentially be in the KKK, okay, and making fun of the town of Randolph, which has a large Black population, okay? Imagine, you don't think people who live in Randolph have a right to know about this guy, or people in Sharon who, apparently belong in camps because, Hitler was on, had the right idea. This guy should be outed as a matter of public concern and public interest. And there ought to be a study on this. There ought to be a federal investigation into all these civil rights violations, which may or may not have occurred. They should be trying to find out that car accident. What happened to those people? Did they respond? Did these people die? Did they suffer? Was there a delayed reaction? This is outrageous.
Where's the investigation into the girlfriend that he's talking about roofing and assaulting while she's sleeping? If I have a client who calls me up and says, oh, well, yeah, they got my phone and this is the shit that I was typing to my buddies, I'm like, we've got a problem. we've got a serious problem. I want to know when and if that investigation into him, in terms of charging him criminally, is going to be taken up. He has to be looked at. And I want to know who else. This is, you know what I mean? This isn't, Proctor's not a unicorn in the sense that he's the monster that he is. There's guys it's like you said, Mark, we need to see what the responses were from the other people that were involved.
If he did that to his own girlfriend, what do you think he would do to some woman he met at a bar randomly? By the way, there are very few responses you get, but what you do get is also disgraced Canton Sergeant Good, okay, who on the nude pictures thing says, I would send it to you. This guy, he's going to send pictures of his own wife or whatever. He said, I would send it to you. He's like, come on, we're family.
Nothing about the tone sounded like he was being sarcastic either.
No, he sounded He sounded like a sexually frustrated juvenile teenager saying, "You got pictures? Like, give me something to work with here." These people are gross.
Yeah.
Terrifying. It's that thing with the gun and the badge and the weight of that office is just absolutely terrifying to me,
it
man.
goes back to seriously increasing the personality tests to like the nth, like however much they can to weed degenerates like this out. I mean, they do. I feel like they do harsher.
Part of the scandal, right? How the hell did he get in the state police?
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I think they do harsher personality tests for like retail people to determine whether they're stealing or not. I remember like as a teenager, I had to answer like, hundreds of questions and some kind like they're trying to trick me up to see if I'm really going to steal.
I mean, my father was trying to get, he had applied to become an attorney with the FAA, and like that background investigation they did was unbelievable. Like the people that they went to, like throughout the history of his life to talk to was unbelievable.
Well, they were prepared for that though. They were like, you gotta lie.
I mean, look, I don't know.
The FBI used to not hire you if you were from a divorced family because they knew that resulted in people who were less stable. I mean, as years went by and everybody comes from a divorced family, I'm assuming that they've changed that. But last I knew, in the 90s, it was like if you came from a family where your parents were divorced, they're like, nah, you can't. You're already not stable enough.
Yeah, and that's not even that long ago. If that's the case, that's wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right. So here I'm going to ask you one last question, and it's lighter. We're going to move away from the nightmare that is Michael Proctor. So if you were going to walk away from the law tomorrow, okay, what is the wildly different career that you think that you'd be great at? What would it be?
Journalist.
See, I always wanted to be a sports guy. I wanted to go to sport. Yeah, like I wanted to be a sports announcer, do color commentary.
Yeah, that would be really good at that. I mean, look, like anyone else, my first was like I wanted to be like starting center fielder for the Red Sox. That dream died at about age 9. I think it was pretty clear. But real world, yeah. I mean, some kind of sports thing would be great. Or there's. I always consider myself like an amateur journalist. There are times on certain things that the media is running around covering where I sit there and say, why are they not asking the right? I mean, I've said this before. I mean, and it even came up in some of the Massachusetts commentary way back when Hank Brennan was hired and they were, talking about it, which is, not a problem. I mean, good for him. He made a lot of money and it's not his fault. But why are you people not asking Michael Morrissey not the fact about his hiring, but like why? Okay, you have an office of 50 attorneys who are presumed like Greg Connor for one, and others who are presumably competent. You have Lally. You clearly don't have a conflict because Lally is involved in the second case, as is McLaughlin. So why are the taxpayers paying a ringer? Can you justify that? Does nobody in your office want to do this? Is nobody competent? Why are we paying for this? And none of these journalists, as far as I know, if I'm wrong, sorry, I never saw a story about it, ever asked the real question. I mean, they bury the lead in these stories, which is, what are they doing?
It's frustrating. Like even with I had written something up because I had seen the media was putting out information about that Mackenzie Shirilla, that crazy crash case where the girl smashed into the wall and killed her boyfriend and another buddy. And, she was convicted recently. And, apparently her attorney had missed by one day because of leap year to file his post-conviction petition. It had to be filed within 365 days. And he filed it on day 356. Or no, 366. And the court said, we don't have jurisdiction. You blew it.
Okay. What they will have jurisdiction over is ineffective assistance of counsel. When that comes, 6 months from now, that'll be the issue.
I mean, that's going to be the issue.
Although under a higher burden to get to your end result. And I have to correct myself. Apparently that whole FBI didn't hire divorced people was an urban legend, but Hoover had a very strict like moral code that they have to be from the ideal family, and there were a lot of informal disqualifications, but they didn't cite divorce. They just said stable home life. But so I needed to correct that. I guess it wasn't an official,
Right. Well, thanks for the correction. I wouldn't have known. I had always heard the same thing at some point, but clearly it was
that's what the Google search, the AI, answer came up. So
all right, Mark, it is time for you, my friend, to begin your weekend.
I'm
watching too hard.
I'm gonna have probably a nice glass of wine and watch what are we watching now on Netflix? I Will Find You. Are you watching that?
No, is it good?
It's good.
To watch it.
It's well written. I'm kind of a TV snob. I really like well written.
So am I.
But putting that aside, it's entertaining. It's fun. It's a drama, but it's kind of like, oh God, you're not good at this. But it's a remake of a book. So
good. I need one. I need one. I've been watching reruns.
It's worth watching. And as an added bonus, the lead female role is played by Heliar from Severance.
Oh, nice.
Severance person like I am.
Severance was phenomenal.
Yeah. And it's an 8-episode limited series. I love that.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Yeah, they're not going to leave you hanging for a year waiting for the next season.
So far, it's good. It does. It's not Breaking Bad. Nothing else.
I mean, what is? Except for like we'll have to have the debate. Better Call Saul. They're both like they're so different, but they're both just absolutely brilliant. Like I love them both so much. It's hard. It doesn't make sense. Like you could almost watch Better Call Saul first because it really is an origin story. You know what I mean? And it kind of leads you into what it goes down. Yeah, but I think in terms of kind of having an understanding and being excited about the Breaking Bad characters coming into that series was part of the joy of watching that.
It was brilliant how they took a character, obviously Saul Goodman, who was like a clownish, almost caricature of a sleazy lawyer. I mean, in Breaking Bad, if you go back and watch Breaking Bad, he's a complete clown,
Right.
And they took that character, not knowing this at the time of Breaking Bad, and said, let's do an origin show on him. And they somehow made him like this compelling figure, flawed to the core, obviously, but good in many ways, who, broke bad after his, all the other stuff. And then they went and finished it, put it in real time as Breaking Bad was happening, as he was doing his thing. And then the after effects of Breaking Bad and the way that they plan and put little Easter eggs that you see.
So good.
The only thing I thought that didn't land perfectly when they merged the worlds, the one scene near the end of Better Call Saul where they have Kim Wexler smoking a cigarette outside with Jesse Pinkman.
Yep.
That I actually thought felt a little I'm not seeing it.
Right.
But I mean, they took the one throwaway comment in Breaking Bad where he's like, it was Ignacio, it was Lalo, when they're going to throw him in the pit. And then they made 2 incredible characters.
It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, when Odenkirk was so amazing in that role, too. And it was like, they had him from Cicero, Illinois, man, Slippin' Jimmy. I was like, so immediately I'm like, it was so, it's just, they're brilliant writer. They're just phenomenal what they do. It's like you said, the Easter eggs and just the placement and the timing that it's the way they build it all together. And it's one of the greatest shows of all time. No question about it, man.
Yeah. All right, Mark. Well, we appreciate you. Joe, go enjoy your series and your weekend and your family.
Yeah, we love you over here, man. Thanks for hanging with us and stay out of trouble this weekend. Don't work. Take a weekend for yourself.
A little bit, not too much. And in a few weeks, we can start up listening to all your Bears obnoxious bullshit again. But I'm looking forward to it.
I'm ready for it, man. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for the NFL season to start. Thanks, brother. We appreciate you. All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Do
All
you
right.
position us to say goodbye and read? I think there's some
I
supers that
think
we
we
didn't
got
read.
through. There was only one question I didn't get to ask Mark.
Kyle Coden says we had a trainee pulled for a court case in BCT. He had to recycle.
Yeah, I didn't. There was one other question, and I'm not really following. I know Andrea Burkhardt is following the Charlie Kirk.
Oh, you put it up, so I assumed you guys were talking about it.
I forgot to ask him because I didn't know if you put it up or I couldn't remember if I put it up. Like, I don't know. I have not been following the Robinson case, but I know there's been some wild stuff going on with it. So I apologize, Deb, for not getting this particular question asked. I don't know if Mark is following that either, but my apologies for not getting it to him.
But I know who is Scoop Conlon.
Oh yeah.
So you can look for Lauren Conlon on X or at the LA Mag, and I'm sure she's spoken on it, and she's great. So
yeah, she's amazing. All right, and then we got a few Venmos. I think we got through all the other supers. Yeah.
Did you get this one? This one was more recent. At for Dread said he's not in basic. Allegedly, he's in some prep school in Oklahoma from a low score 30 on ASVAP test. So I guess that's Colin.
Dread's always coming with the facts. I love it. Thanks, man. I did not know that. Well, that seems like he could take a day off of school.
Yeah. And JPJH makes a great point. In what world does a FOIA request hold more weight than a Brady request for discoverable information in a criminal case? Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what he's saying.
Yep.
I mean,
and we got a few Venmos.
We didn't get this one either.
So, and I never know how to pronounce this name. It's Tighe. How do you think you pronounce that? Tighe.
Try.
So she sent 5. And tell me phonetically how I spell, because you're always in chat. I hate butchering Ride or Die's names. She said for turning off the ads for all the others. Thank you so much. She sent $5. Appreciate that. And Kay sent a $20. And it was Katie did it. Katie did it. She did. Katie did it. She did.
Well, that's and I skipped the same question that she asked. Wait, hold on. I want to try to get you at top. Okay. And I didn't get to ask Mark, are you familiar with Daniel Holtzclaw case, Mark? Sorry. So
I am. I don't know if Mark
did it. She did.
Katie did it. She did.
Right.
It's tough. Thank you.
And thank you for continued support for 24 months. Happy anniversary.
Yeah, 100%.
So what'd she ask there? Same question?
Yeah, she had just said, I don't think she said anything in it. I think she just said from her.
Oh,
so
well,
thank you
for your generosity. And sorry, we didn't get to put it up for him. And then we had Music to My Soul saying, Ali, please say petitioning activity to Mark. And someone else had said the same thing. I was trying to find it. And I didn't get to do it.
And then Kathy sent a $10 Venmo. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And a heart. And a heart.
And Ashen Sugar says petitioning activity, Ali. Yes. See, the brain frog is real. The brain frog is real. We had some new members. We had Law Talkers and Stacy Q. Let me make sure there's not one more before you go out giving hugs. So welcome, you guys. And what do they get, babe?
Family hugs. That's what they get.
Yes. And that's what they got from Romy and MA. 14 months. Thank you for your continued support. And I put these up when Mark was on, but they weren't questions. Julie Jensen says Motta's, Bederow's, and Fireside on a Friday night. And karaoke said, strong work, great trio. And Nancy said, great vibe. Who doesn't love a fireside chat with Mr. Bederow? We appreciate all of your guys' support.
Look at that crackling fire there.
I know. Bob put a lot of good work into that. And then
actually, Ali made that thing.
Well, but you requested it. No, Ellen says, thank you all GOAT lawyers for your passion, educational generosity, and awesomeness. All 3 of you use rants, give life. Also free Jamie Snow.
Thank you, Ellen.
And Haley, thanks for your continued support. Rarely get to chat, but never miss a live. Well, that's so sweet. And thanks for your continued support. And I do think that did get us everything.
All right. So a couple of announcements. First, please like, share, and subscribe. If you really love us, become a member. We love members. Members are amazing. We love when people buy other people memberships. All the membership things are amazing. You get to use all our cool emojis. You get to hear about me talking about having members onlys that we never actually do. But we will at some point. At some point, the chicken's going to come home to roost, and we will have members only.
We are talking about like that we do members lives on like shorter things that then we turn into videos, so that we'll maybe start doing more of our lives as members only, and then it'll be released as a video afterwards. We actually discussed that today.
It's a good idea. It's a good idea, babe. And then big announcement, Sean Ellis is coming on. It'll be 5 p.m. on Monday, the 29th this month. So this upcoming Monday.
You got to set that today then.
I'm setting it today. It's going to be amazing. If you have not watched Trial 4, go and watch it. Rosemary Scapiccio is his lawyer. It's an incredible documentary. And Sean is an incredible human being. You guys are going to be blown away about who he is and how he is and what he does now and how insane his story is.
And how much Rosemary had to go through. Discovery, old police reports, corrupt cops, looking for links to find the, to show, to prove to a court that this is all from corruption.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
And don't forget to hype this. So if you've already liked it, after we end it, you unclick the thumbs up, then you re-click it, and there should be a hype option. So,
yeah. And if you came late and if you didn't hear our intro song, I'm going to suggest that instead of just jumping off the channel, sit and wait and listen for the outro, because we made it especially for Mark.
Did you set this as the outro? I don't see it.
Play it. Oh, wait.
I'll change it right now.
Okay.
Edit.
Do it.
And I'm going to make it this. We just have to remember. Okay. So it is set. So our intro special for Mark Bederow is going to play as our outro. Thank and say goodbye to the people.
All right, you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again. Remember, like, share, subscribe, hit those notifications so that you guys never miss a live with us. We love you so much. If you're new, if you're an old timer, we love all of you, because without you guys, I'd just be an old man
sitting around talking to his wife.
Listen to the outro.
Take a seat, let the embers glow. Just the facts, falls and strikes. Here we go. Spin walks out, let the real talk flow. Fireside Chats with Bederow.